A new Avatar, The Last Airbender series has been announced, and as always, the fandom is buzzing. And I point to me not to the fandom because I love Avatar. Guys, I've watched the shows, I've read the comics, and I've dreamed for the day when they made the announcement that we were hoping for. Unfortunately, this is not the one. Like, we were really hoping that they would announce the gang show, but that's not what we're getting. We are getting a new Avatar, but I'm not upset. Because I love the universe. So, you know what? I'm not mad at it. But yeah. With the development in the Avatar universe, one thing is guaranteed. Discourse about Korra. Oh god. Guys, the discourse is back in full force. And it's been so entertaining. I usually don't get like fully involved in this discourse, but I'm just like, with me doing more content in the week, I feel like I have more room to speak about the other topics which I love. As you guys know, I'm a full-on nerd. I have my comic books, I read my manga, I watch my anime. I do all of that alongside reading my, my books that you guys see here. But I only discuss the books. But now, with a bit more room, we are gonna get into it. So I am absolutely super excited. For those of you who are new, yeah, this is how it is over here. My name is Shelly. I realized I might have not mentioned that. But it's all about books here. But you know what? I'm changing it a bit. And we're just gonna make it about life. And the life of a nerd, essentially. And that involves Korra. Baby girl. Yeah, so today we're gonna go into it. I'm super excited. I always watch the discourse, but I've never actually actively participated, at least not online. I do it with my friends. But now we're gonna get into it, So guys, grab your popcorn, and then you know what? I know that you guys are ready to start typing depending on what I say. Let's get into it. You know what? Because I'm gonna say what I say, And you guys know how it is. I'm gonna present I'm gonna try to present both sides and then present where I stand. It's gonna be hard because there's a place to stand. Anyway, now The Legend of Korra has always been one of the most divisive pieces of Avatar media. Out of all of the Avatars we've seen, Korra remains the most divisive. Like, I swear, the most. Some fans believe she's unfairly criticized, while others argue that, she has a lot of flaws. But, a lot of fans are saying, no, she's unfairly criticized because her flaws make her one of the best. And others say her flaws make her one of the weakest avatars in history. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of like back and forth and people are on both sides. But it's not just Korra the Avatar. It's also the show itself. Some fans argue it's an underrated masterpiece, while others claim it's a complete failure compared to Avatar The Last Airbender. But today, the real question of today is, does Korra deserve the hate she gets? Or, are her haters grasping at straws, So today, super excited, we're tackling why Korra gets so much hate, and more importantly, whether the hate is justified in any regard. So yeah, today we're breaking it all down. We're going to look at the fair critiques. We're going to look at the overblown arguments. We're going to look at the things that people overlook. We're just going to look at all of it and, have some fun. And I'm really excited for the aftermath, being like the comments. I probably won't engage as much because I just kind of want to see like, where everyone stands. I think it's going to be really fun. So yeah, let's get straight into it. First and foremost, the shadow of Aang. And something that we all know, the fecal problem. Guys, when you're discussing Korra, Avatar Korra, we have to start with the most obvious issue, and the fact that Korra was always going to be compared to Aang, okay? When The Legend of Korra was announced, I remember, oh goodness, guys, I was so excited because we all thought that, after The Last Airbender was finished, and obviously we had the comic books, and we're just like, oh, we wish we could get more, but then we didn't hear anything. And then they announced, The Legend of Korra, and so it was so great. It was even great because I was just like, oh my goodness, she's she's from the water tribe, she's a girl. I'm like, she looking tough, and her little polar bear, I was just like, purr. I'm like this show's going back. I remember when that announcement came out. And as I remember that, no, the fans were on something, because fans expected a continuation of Avatar The Last Airbender, which it is technically. It's the same universe, and we do see Aang in like flashbacks, we have Aang's son. Like, it is a continuation of Avatar The Last Airbender, just not with Aang. But fans of Avatar The Last Airbender, there was this expectation, of, they wanted the same level of storytelling. They wanted the same level of character development. They wanted the same level of world building. But instead, what we got a series with a completely different tone, a completely different protagonist, a completely different structure. You had Aang. Aang was, this light-hearted, reluctant hero. But, Korra was like brash, even a bit impulsive, and she was eager to take on her responsibilities. Like, she was ready. She said, "I'm the Avatar. Let me loose." She was ready to be set out into the world. And I think, with a lot of people facing that, everyone was just like, it's a bit different. It's a bit different. Everything is a bit different. And so I think a lot of people took beef with that from the beginning. But I think when it comes to this first issue of, the comparison with Aang, I think we have to, it doesn't matter which side you stand on, we all have to admit that sequel syndrome is real, okay? People will always compare the new to the old. And in Korra's case, she wasn't just different from Aang. Like, she was literally like the complete opposite. Like, everything about her was the complete opposite of Aang. So for the fans who were waiting for Aang, just an older Aang, it was kind of like a slap to the face that not only did we not get Aang, but we got someone who was completely different to him. Completely opposite, like, not completely opposite, but in many ways, she was like his complete opposite. And that alone set her up for like harsh critique and criticism, like left, right, and center. It doesn't matter. Now, another reason Korra faced backlash, and when I say Korra, I mean like the show itself, the story of Korra, was like the way it told its story, Avatar The Last Airbender. And I remember I was speaking to my sister, because we always talk about this, but Avatar The Last Airbender had a very, very clear villain arc over 3 seasons. You knew from the very beginning, you knew that Fire Lord Ozai was our big bad. He was our villain. He was our enemy. Him, that one day. We knew he was our enemy. The Fire Nation was our enemy. We knew, like, there was a clear villain arc from the very onset, and we explored it over the 3 seasons. Like, we had many villains, and we had like brushes with the Fire Nation that showed, obviously, like, gave us glimpses of what the final battle will be, and it was so cool. Korra introduced a new villain every season, because I remember, like, finding out that it was going to be 4 seasons. It was very, very exciting. Oh, we get even more, but yeah, Korra introduced a new villain. Like, the Legend of Korra introduced a new villain every season, every single one, and so, like, there was just this like lack of cohesion, bro. It was kind of like, where was this going, like Avatar The Last Airbender, it was like this long form narrative, like leading up to this single climactic battle with Fire Lord Ozai. But Korra was structured in these like self-contained seasons, each with a different villain, and not just different villains, they each had like a different theme, and different conflict as well, So whereas Avatar The Last Airbender was a journey-based narrative, we didn't see that with Korra. Like, it was weird, And so I think that's one of the reasons why the show itself, not Korra, but the show, got hate. Because it made the show seem so, it just felt less cohesive. Because, like, some seasons, like, I feel like a lot of season 3 was a season that we're all just like, whoa. Like, season 3, I feel like no matter what you felt about the show, the characters, season 3 was universally praised. Like, everyone was just like, ooh, it was on. And then you get to season 2 of Legend of Korra, you're just like, the heck? It left fans really, really frustrated, because there was so little time for world building, and it often felt rushed. And so many fans, many critics, I would say, they argue that Korra suffered, like the show, it suffered from Nickelodeon's lack of faith in the show, which I personally agree with it, because I feel like the creators, because they didn't know if they were getting another season, they had to write each one as if it could be the last. And the result was like an uneven but ambitious show that tried to do too much in too little time, and that hurt. And I think alongside that, in the show, like I said, the show was Avatar The Last Airbender had like this journey-based narrative. And I think something else that people kind of took issue with the show was the fact that Korra was city-centric and more politically driven. One thing I will say, I actually really enjoyed that Korra was more politically driven. I feel like, Aang was, a monk, and monks are kind of nomadic in nature, and then so we kind of saw that in like its journey based narrative, which I felt like they connected like his character with the actual narrative itself. And I feel like Korra being now in the city that Aang created, or founded, however you want to say it, and there's now new systems in place, and literally so much time has gone by and so many events have occurred. I think to not focus on the politics would kind of be a missed opportunity. So I actually really like that it was politically driven, and yeah, so I can kind of see where like people didn't like that. Now, we've talked about the show a bit and why people didn't really like the show. But now it's time to focus on the person that we're focusing on, the character at hand, Korra. And obviously why she's hated, and is the hate justified. So we're just going to present the, the factors here, and then you guys, I'm going to say from what I've seen, okay? Now, we cannot talk about what Korra is hated without mentioning the misogyny factor. Misogyny? I feel like I said that wrong. Misogyny. I said it right. The misogyny argument, Because one of the biggest defenses of Korra is that her criticism is rooted in misogyny. The idea that some of the hate Korra gets is gendered. So, like, a lot of people say that many of the criticisms thrown at Korra, she's arrogant, she's reckless, she's too emotional, obviously, and, not likable, are rarely used against male protagonists. And you know what? I will say that there is some truth to that. But while there's some truth to that, I think it's an oversimplification. Because let's be real. The Legend of Korra, not just the Legend of Korra, the Legend of Korra and Avatar The Last Airbender, the entire universe, I feel like is filled with strong female characters who are widely loved. We have the Beifongs. We have Toph, who is a fan favorite across both shows. You have Lin, who was literally a no-nonsense powerhouse who carried half of the Legend of Korra. You have Asami, who was intelligent, independent, and widely respected by fans. And then you have Jinora and Iki. Jinora is one of the best written prodigies in the series. And I know some people are saying, "Oh, Shelley, that's besides the point." No, because the point is, if Korra was a man, she wouldn't get the same criticism. No. Because the men in the show faced those criticisms. The ones who were brash, reckless, emotional. Zuko, we criticized him for that. Let's not get it twisted. The thing is, the idea that all of Korra's criticisms is misogynistic falls apart when you look at the fact that the fan embraces other female characters, especially characters like Toph and Lin, who exhibit the same traits as Korra that people say, led to her hate. But unlike Korra, they were not hated. I don't think the issue is that Korra was a strong woman. I think the issue is with how she was written, okay? So at this point, we have to look at, fact versus misogyny. Korra was emotional, reckless, and arrogant, It's not misogyny to point it out. It is a fact. She was. She was all of these things. And the thing is, while the same fandom loves Aang and Zuko, the same fandom also called out Aang and Zuko for these flaws, for similar flaws. Not just Aang and Zuko, and Sokka. Despite the fandom loving them, the fandom called them out for being emotional and for being brash. Like, let's be real, they were. Aang started out as this reluctant hero. He ran away from his duty, and Aang made countless bad decisions based on his emotions. And obviously he grew into his role, as, this balanced, fun-loving guy who applied wisdom. Zuko was stubborn, but with his redemption arc, the writers executed that so well that his flaws became essential to his growth. So while the fans will criticize him for being brash, emotional, annoying, consistently angry throughout, they still loved him. Sokka was actually a full-blown misogynist. Let's be real. If we're talking about misogyny, we gotta bring Sokka into this. He started out as a full-blown misogynist who grew. His flaws, what the writers did with it was they used it as a growth opportunity, and they actually fulfilled those growth opportunities. Korra, on the other hand, the criticisms, brash, emotional, we use these criticisms to describe other characters, male and female, but we saw change in those characters. And for example, for someone like Toph, let's be real. Toph remained brash, and she remained brash and impulsive, but people still love Toph. And the thing is, I keep saying listen guys, I don't hate Korra. Like, I don't hate Korra, but I feel like this argument of misogyny is an oversimplification, because Korra didn't change much. She remained headstrong for most of the series. She remained dismissive of advice for most of the series, and for a lot of the time she repeated the same mistakes, and even when she kind of showed change, she still had some issues. Now, pause, because I know you guys are already writing a little paragraph. Does that mean that none of the criticism of Korra is rooted in sexism? Absolutely not. There were some horrendously misogynistic views out there. There are some people whose entire arguments against Korra is rooted in misogyny. We have to be honest. I have actually seen people say, that Korra wouldn't be able to do this simply because she's a woman and the way that she's structured in her biology. I just sat there like, every argument was just dumb, like rooted in baseless misogyny. Like, so yes, we can say that Korra did face a lot of criticism based in misogyny, based on her gender. Like, we can say that, but I think it's naive to use it as one of the main arguments for why she receives the hate that she does, okay? I think criticizing Korra's lack of growth isn't sexist, especially because that lack of growth was seen for like at least half of the series. I think it's just pointing out her poor character development. And speaking of, poor character development for a lot of the series, we have to go into Korra's personality, in her character. Because one of the biggest criticisms of Korra is that she's, as we said, headstrong, arrogant, reckless, impulsive. She jumps into fights without thinking. She doesn't respect her mentors, especially Tenzin. She often acts entitled to her role as Avatar. Now, let's be honest. These are true. She's all those things. Or she was all those things, because these things didn't stick. Not all of them, but I think another key question here is, does it make her a bad character or a flawed one? Because we have to remember, all the avatars had flaws, bro. Like, all the avatars, like Aang was childish. Like, yeah, Shelly, he was a child. He was childish even as he grew. He kept being childish. Like, there were some things like Aang, be for real. Like, they all had flaws. So now with all of these characteristics of Korra, all these traits, does it make her a bad character? Because there's some truth to the fact that a lot of fans expect their protagonist to be, perfect and likable from the start. Aang wasn't perfect, but he was likable from the start because, he was so like, bubbly and happy and stuff like that. And Korra was bubbly and happy and stuff like that. But, because of her impulsiveness, it kind of like negated it for certain people. I think what a lot of fans, or what a lot of critics, I should say, fail to realize when it comes to Korra is that her journey is meant to be one of failing, and rebuilding. I think with Aang, it wasn't presented as a failing, and rebuilding. It was kind of it was presented as growing. Whereas with Korra, it was presented as failing, rebuilding. It's the way that the writers presented it. It's the way that it was presented to us as viewers, as, fans or critics, whichever side you fall on. And the thing is, with her journey being presented as failing, rebuilding, it's actually very, very great to see. It's great to see because remember, this gives opportunity for growth as a character, and character growth, character development is what we want to see in good written characters, and well written characters, sorry. But the thing is, one of the biggest defenses of Korra here, when it comes to like, failing, rebuilding, growth, development, one of the biggest defenses to back the fact that she had good character development and so was a good character is that she went through a lot of trauma, and that should count as character development. The failing and rebuilding part. But see, here's the thing, and this is where I'm just like, guys, while I say that, the critics have their flaws, the defenders, you guys have your flaws as well. Because, guys, trauma does not equal growth, okay? Let's not get it twisted. Korra suffered. She suffered, bro. Like, she was poisoned by the Red Lotus. She was physically and mentally broken in season 3. Like, oh god, it was sad. And she really, really had to rebuild herself in season 4. Failing, rebuilding. That's her journey, And so I can see where the people who use her trauma to defend her, the critics who said that she has a lack of character development, I can see that because they're just like, okay, she failed, she rebuilt. But here, experiencing trauma isn't the same as developing as a character. Okay. Growth means learning from mistakes. Character development, that includes learning from your mistakes, recognizing behaviors within yourselves that are, not conducive to, a good character, and changing that behavior. It's becoming wiser. Okay. See, Korra's arrogance throughout the show, that wasn't just a personality quirk. It was literally a core theme of a character that it didn't help, okay? And the thing is, this flaw is meant to drive her arc alongside, the other flaws. But unlike Aang, who had to accept his duty because he was a reluctant hero, Korra didn't have that. Korra always wanted to be the Avatar. What Korra had to do was she had to learn humility and emotional resilience. While I will say that she grew in the fact that she started listening to her mentors and the people around her more, like, after she got. I think what made people upset with Korra and disliked her and didn't see it as much of character development is the fact that after the trauma and after she started to show some growth, started listening to people and she was a bit less impulsive, she started to go back to her old ways. And people were just like, where was the development here? Where was the development? Like, she definitely could use more lessons in humility, and Korra had this entitlement when it came to being the Avatar. And so people were just like, there's no growth here, because people didn't see her as learning from her mistakes, because she consistently made the same mistakes like almost throughout the entire show. Barely changed her behavior in terms of like the humility aspect, and the entitlement aspect, and in terms of like becoming wiser. I mean, she started listening to people more. So yeah, I would say she had some character development, but barely. And that's, I think, why people were just like, people just say she didn't have any. I don't say she did have some, definitely, especially after the trauma. I would say that she did change, so she did have some character development, because in season 1, she ignored Tenzin's guidance for everything, dismissed everything when it came to airbending techniques. And obviously, after everything, she started listening to Tenzin more. So development, growth. I do see that. Season 2, she disregarded the warnings and broke the spirit world barrier. We'll get to that later. I'm not going to touch that right now. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to touch that. It felt like she was just stuck in a cycle of repeating the same mistakes without learning from them. And so her character development seemed very, very stagnant. And so that's one of the reasons why she gets the hate she gets, and I can see why. Now, another major critique, the bending and the power debates. Guys, debates around this are probably some of my favorite, because the passion that people like pull up when they're talking about bending and power, I'm just like guys, oh, it's always so funny. So this is really interesting to me, this debate, because I think we always have to remember that, guys, she's a written character, so who do we blame here, because the main critique is that, like, she loses almost every fight. Everyone. Okay, let's look at this. Korra, on paper, is one of the most physically gifted avatars ever. Like, we gotta give Korra her props, one of the most physically gifted avatars. I mean, she mastered the 3 elements as a child. How old was she? I can't remember, but she was literally not a toddler, but like a child, like a very, very small, young child. She was trained by the best of the best, for years, because they discovered her when she was young, and she had already gotten 3 of the elements. She had already started popping them out, and she was trained from that very age until she was a teenager, almost an adult. And that being said, with there not being a current war when the series started, and obviously things being documented better, things being left hidden, because obviously the nations got along semi-okay, like, she had access to more knowledge. She had free access to more knowledge than past avatars. Like, she didn't have to start, remember when Aang needed to speak to Roku? And they needed to go to the temple during the eclipse, and they had to sneak in, like, she had access to all of these things freely. There was no sneaking about. I mean, they did do a lot of sneaking for certain things, 100%. But yeah, she definitely had a lot of advantages that past avatars didn't have. And yet, she struggled in almost every major battle. This did not work in her favor in terms of the defenses. I remember when I was compiling everything, I was just like, this is going to be so funny to discuss, because Korra defenders often claim that her enemies were harder than Aang's. But I think we have to pause and actually ask ourselves, is that really true? Fire Lord Ozai was a literal walking natural disaster. I mean, we barely faced him, but there's a reason why. That man was that man was a monster. Azula, who we faced quite a lot, the psychopath herself. She was a genius prodigy, in bracket, psychopath. And this is the same girl who nearly overthrew an entire kingdom on her own. That made me laugh. Honestly, that entire situation, I was just like, let's flesh that storyline a bit more. I would have loved to see step by step her moving mad like this. She's funny, she's crazy, but in a funny, not a funny way. No, she's funny, but in a crazy way. Yeah, that's it. Obviously, Combustion Man, he was a very unique and terrifying threat. And then let's not forget that these people were fighting the entire Fire Nation army regularly, and the generals in that army were they were also psychopaths, I would say. I think quite a few of them didn't have a conscience, 100%. From season 1, I feel like we could see that they some of them were very troubled. If this was the real world where you had to pass a psych eval to get into real armies, you wouldn't they wouldn't pass. They're psychopaths. Literally, there was military warfare, not just individual enemies. And then you had Korra. Amon was a very cool villain, in the first season. I liked it. I liked, it was something new. But truly, that man could have been beaten. That man was kind of okay. We're just gonna let that one go. If you compare Amon to Aang's enemies, every single one of Aang's enemies could have wiped the floor with that man. Unalaq. I think Unalaq is the one that pisses everybody off whenever anyone says that Korra's enemies were harder. Unalaq. I think in both series, possibly the weakest Avatar villain. Unalaq was an amazing, let's be honest, Unalaq was an amazing waterbender, very, very powerful. But he was literally just an evil waterbender. And I think with this one, whenever someone says her enemies were harder, I'm just like, her uncle, a very, very strong waterbender, but you are a waterbender. You got beat up, smacked around in your own ends. That was a bit shameful. You have Zahir. Zahir probably would have been a bit stronger than Combustion Man, but once again, Aang would have beat him. I feel like Kuvira is where I'm just like, okay, you guys have something, because Kuvira was a militaristic dictator. But you see, this is the issue here. Kuvira was defeated by raw force. Korra, your entire thing is brute force. That is your entire claim to fame. Especially because you denied the spiritual element of being the Avatar for so long. Literally brute force, 100%, and you were getting whooped to filth. Kuvira, obviously, militaristic dictator, so army. Once again, they were regularly fighting the Fire Nation in Avatar: The Last Airbender. One thing I will say, the Red Lotus, yeah, I won't even lie. The Red Lotus was on one. They were definitely on one. Aang and the gang, they would have had some struggles. Because remember, the Red Lotus even did kind of take out not the entire gang, but they definitely they took out one of the gang when they were older. So I don't blame Korra for losing. The Red Lotus was on some crack, they were insane. But I think what's really interesting with the Red Lotus is Korra's villains were ideologically challenging, because they came to dismantle systems. They came against the Avatar. With Avatar: The Last Airbender, it was really just about killing Aang. With Korra, it was really just a case of the whole system where why do we need the Avatar? That one just kept coming up. Let's break. It just kept coming up. So they were definitely ideologically challenging. They definitely made her think. Made her think back on where she stood. Definitely ideologically challenging. But in physical combat, they weren't objectively stronger than Aang's on a whole. Okay, when you put all of them together, like bar for bar, Aang would have come out on top. And I also think, honestly, with the whole attack on Aang and the gang when they were adults, and the whole murder and all that, I think Aang and the gang were always, because they were adults and focusing on building Republic City, and because Aang still had his whole pacifistic tendencies, that's how the Red Lotus ended up to grow to the point that they are in Korra, where they were basically an unstoppable force. And that's the thing. That's why I'm just I feel people who are hating on Korra, let's acknowledge some of Aang's faults. This pacifistic nature, it got us in trouble several times over. Let's get it together. But yeah, overall, Aang's enemies were tougher and they beat them most of the time. So, the argument that Korra's enemies were tougher, so sorry. Wrong all the time. So sorry. And overall, absolutely not. And the thing is, despite her training, Korra still relied on this brute force in nearly every battle. a tactic that repeatedly failed her. And that's why I think in season 1, she was pissing everybody off. Because you keep losing using your brute force, even though you've been well trained. You clearly keep losing. Maybe you should consider Tenzin's advice and start connecting to your spirit side, okay? Because it might be able to help you, okay? She never listened, even though she kept failing on the brute side of things, okay? And the thing is, overall, she never mastered the intelligence, the adaptability, the creativity, the strategic nature that past avatars use that helped them to win. Because remember, Aang didn't have the brute force of Korra. Aang did get a bit beat. Azula nearly took him out. We can't forget these factors in the original series. But then when you add all of these things, it helped. It helped him avoid death several times over. Him and his team. There's a whole other situation. Like, I feel like we should have a whole other video to discuss Korra's team, because the thing is, if you were to put, if we like, let's go away from who's the best and the worst avatar. If we were to just put Korra and her team against Aang and his team, they would destroy them quickly. They would mop the floor with them. One of the reasons Aang is still alive is because of his team. We're not going to discount that. We're not going to discount that Aang definitely, especially as he was learning and growing, Aang was weak a lot of the time. He was a great airbender, obviously, but obviously as he was growing, he presented as weak because he couldn't do a bunch of things. But the team around him, by the time we got to season 3, no one can touch Team Avatar. When we get to Legend of Korra, no matter what season we're in, I'm so sorry, I could definitely take you guys out. I could definitely, with a solid team, take you guys out, which is why Kuvira, with her military, was able to just run amok for a madness. And the thing is, I think more than that, Korra's power was never just the issue. I think her struggles were also psychological, and even before all the trauma. I think because she fought enemies that weren't just physically stronger but ideologically challenging, you had Amon, you had Unalaq, you had Zahir, Kafir, all of them, they represented threats to her very identity as the Avatar. I think because of that, she lost fights not just because, she was weak, but because she was up against a world that didn't need or trust her anymore. We'll get back to that a bit later as well, but it's okay. But yeah, I think this is what I mean. Because she ignored Tenzin for so long, even after season 1, even after she got access to air and we got to season 2, she was still using air in a very brute force way. She didn't appreciate the spirit realm as much as she should until a bit later. And I think because Aang, and even Aang had his weak mental moments. Remember that one time where he had to deny his love for Katara? Guys, you remember all of this. I don't gotta tell you all of this. You guys remember all of that locked him away from his power. And once again, another flaw on Aang's side. We're not going to ignore Aang's flaws, because I think a lot of the time when people are digging on Korra, people forget to dig on the other avatars. The other avatars weren't perfect. It's just the fact that, while they weren't perfect, Korra, you presented a bit more flaws sometimes, or some more problems sometimes, that made people kind of want to dig at her and kind of just go down, just beat her down, because of the things that she did. Because Aang had such a closer relationship with the spirit realm, there were a lot of times where he could get help. For example, like I said, when he had to sneak into into that temple to speak to Roku, when he went into the spirit realm, the very first season when he went there with a little koi fish. There were so many times where Aang's connection with the spirit realm helped him defeat an enemy. And I think because she relied so much on brute force, that's where her weakness actually played in. Because if we think about it, the Avatar is the connection between the physical world, the physical world and the spirit world, obviously. And so literally she was disregarding half of her power, if we think about it. And the thing is, now the question is, if she didn't disregard half her power for the entire show, would she have been more powerful? We don't know. But from what we saw, she genuinely presented herself as one of the weakest. Now, another reason why Korra was hated. In this one, I won't even lie. This one, I'm going to make it very, very clear where I stand. I'm so sorry. Because on this one, because for a lot of the arguments, I'll be I see both sides. I lean towards some sides for certain things, but I see both sides, Korra defenders and Korra critics. This one, no, I am against Korra. So sorry. That's the romance drama between, Makora, whatever. Because we can't talk about Korra's hate without addressing the relationship's mess. This I think was definitely bad writing. Definitely bad writing. The Korra Mako Asami love triangle in season 1, messy. It was so unnecessary, and it was frustrating. Let me tell you why I'm against Korra in season 1. Korra saw Mako, very, very cute. That's fair. You saw a guy, you liked him, he was cute. When Mako pulled up, Mako was not interested in her at all. Mako made that clear. And then Mako made the reason why he wasn't interested in her clear. He liked Asami. He was with Asami. He liked her and then he got with her. They got together. They were, they were officially a couple, right? The fact that Korra did not respect that, did not respect Mako's boundaries. You were not a girl's girl, so I was not on Korra's side for that. But this is a very important but, because this is where the misogyny comes to play with a lot of the critics. A lot of the critics only ever come after Korra. And you know what? Korra deserves a lot of the blame. Yes, because she kept pushing up on Mako when Mako did tell her, like, I'm not with it, this is my girl. But we're not going to excuse Mako's treatment of both Korra and Asami when Mako started to develop feelings for Korra. That's disaster, bro. It was but the thing is, a lot of critics only go after Korra. I don't like that. No, we're gonna give them both slack because they was both wrong. Okay, Korra was more wrong because Korra was wrong from the beginning. Like, she was moving mad from the beginning. That man has a girl. He told you he don't like you. Stop pushing up on him. Stop flirting. Leave that man alone until that man lets go of his other girl for you. That she was not being a girl's girl. She was not being a girl's girl. Didn't like it. But Mako? Oh, Mako. Why is he not catching slack? Why is he not catching slack? That man deserved to be singled out at the end of the series. That man was a menace. No, messy behavior. His treatment of them, messy behavior. And I'm so happy he ended up with none. So sorry. Like, you're grown. You're grown. Do better. Do better. Terrible. See, the thing is, there was also the Korrasami. See, I don't even know what to say to that. Because, see, fans were divided. I don't think I was divided at all. Because people felt, obviously, the whole drama in season 1 was messy and it cheapened her character development. I agree with that one. 100%. There's no divide. I feel like most of us agree with that one. It was stupid. But, there were some others who were just like, it didn't do too much. Now, I know that some people love the Korrasami at the end. But the thing is, I'm on the side of people who thought that the ending was rushed and had no build-up. Because it didn't. I'm so sorry. Like, where did it come from? Like, people are just like, yes, it was revolutionary. Where did it come from? It was poor. Like, it was, that in itself was messy. Because where did it come from? Like I said, I feel like when it came to the relationship drama, the romance drama, it was just messy. It was just bad writing. I'm so sorry. It was bad writing. 100% it was fair to criticize how romance was handled in Korra. But, is it a reason to hate the entire show and to hate Korra? Come on now, no. Like, she was a lovesick girl who honestly hadn't been, like I said, she wasn't moving like a girl's girl, but she hadn't had any girl friendships. Like, she hadn't had friendships on a whole. So we're still gonna come after her because she was wrong. But like, is this a reason to fully hate her? I don't think so. I feel like people are doing the most with that one. So sorry. Now, Korra's most damaging decision. Breaking the spirit barrier. We must talk. Because we cannot talk about if and why Korra deserves criticism without mentioning her biggest and most impactful decision. Breaking the divide between the spirit and the human worlds. Now, the biggest defense for this, for the Korra defenders, yeah? She united the world. Did she really? I feel like Korra defenders, and I defend Korra in certain aspects, but in this one I will not. And I will make that clear from the very onset. I feel like Korra defenders love to claim that she united the world by merging the spirit and human realms. But they conveniently ignore that the worlds were separated for a reason. Why was the barrier there, guys? Why was it there? See, 1, protection. Spirits are not all benevolent. Many are chaotic, dangerous, and many actively harm humans. They don't just actively harm humans, they actively hunt humans, okay? And not just that, the barrier was there for balance, okay? The Avatar literally exists to be the bridge between the two realms. And this, by merging them, she essentially made herself obsolete. And this is the real irony here. Her biggest struggle was feeling like the world didn't need her anymore, but that was her own fault. That was literally your own fault. I don't understand why you're crying that people don't need you anymore. They don't. Your role as the Avatar that you were so proud of and you had no humility over was that you were the bridge between the spirit and the human realm. You remove that bridge. Why would they need you? Why would they need you? Oh, why would they need you? Genuinely. Because you now let everything out. And the thing is, yeah, what I didn't like about this is the fact that this is hard, okay? I think what I didn't like about it, I didn't like several things, honestly. But one, obviously she felt bad that the world didn't need her, and people could be like, oh, she could still play a role there, but I'm just like, she exposed millions of people, because millions of people were non-benders. I feel like the world had more non-benders than it had benders, and even some of the benders that they have were not, they weren't powerful, they weren't skilled. So she exposed millions of people, benders and non-benders, to danger with no plan on how to manage the consequences. And then she sulked because the world no longer needed the Avatar. She literally created her own existential crisis. And what I also didn't like, remember when I said like she didn't listen to the advice from her superiors or from her mentors, like Tenzin? She also ignored Rava's warnings. I just don't understand. Like, the reason that the whole Avatar is obviously Wan and Rava, and I'm just like, so you're ignoring them. She disregarded historical precedent as well, guys. And I know historical precedent sometimes needs to be reviewed and changed, because some historical precedent is a bit like it's shifted depending on the context of the world that we're living in. But the context of the world they were living in, the spirits were still malevolent for the most part. It was still something that hadn't been explored. If she wanted to connect it, you know what you can do? Start taking some humans into the spirit realm, do something like that. Start testing it out. Breaking the entire bridge is psychotic, okay? Psychotic behavior. I was over here like, are you okay? Are you okay? I was just like, and guys, let's not forget about the whole breaking the Avatar cycle. Breaking it completely. Letting it be ripped out of you. And I remember my sister, and when we took a pause from that and we got back to the whole her getting it ripped out of her, that one upset me a lot, okay? Yes. Very, very powerful enemy, 100%. You have hundreds of years of fighting history ingrained into your soul. You have history of powerful waterbenders. Not just powerful waterbenders, powerful airbenders, firebenders, earthbenders. In your soul, ingrained in there. But because you never valued the spirit side, you never went in deep, because she could tap into the Avatar state but not the spiritual side. She only tapped into it for power. I'm just like, if you could draw onto some of the literally thousands of years of power, we probably wouldn't have lost those years of skill, history, just everything. I was so pissed at that moment, losing everything. And now we are in the future, because the new series is coming up, and the world hates the Avatar. I kind of want to see what was the final straw for the world itself, where it says, we don't like you, Korra. Because apparently the new Avatar is now in a world where there was a major cataclysm and the world is destroyed now, and the world is now hunting the Avatar because the world hates the Avatar, because apparently the Avatar caused the cataclysm. And in my head, I'm just like, what did she do now? So just for this last reason, of breaking the barrier, and obviously the cataclysm that we're going to find out about, I feel like I can definitely understand why a lot of people don't like her. And we don't know what you did to wreck the world later on. We don't know. And what's kind of sad is now this new Avatar will only have Korra to pull from. And yes, like I said, Korra had power, but I'm just like, it's the knowledge that I'm annoyed that she lost. Knowledge from all those avatars. But let's come to the final verdict, looking at all these points. Does Korra deserve the hate? Because we see why she gets the hate, but does she deserve the hate? I think it's balanced. I think it's yes and no. Genuinely, I know you're probably hearing some of me. You're probably saying, oh, Shelly, you sounded like you were totally against her. I think she deserves some of the hate, 100%. But I think she doesn't deserve all the hate, if you get me, I think there are some definitely valid criticisms, because like she lacks real in-depth character development, 100%. The biggest decision, merging the spirit and the human worlds, literally was reckless and made her role irrelevant, and then she complained about it, which was really annoying of her. And she was physically gifted but strategically weak, which really, is not a reason for us to like her. Let's be real when it comes to the power dynamics with all of her villains, which made her lose most of her fights. Yeah, she often came across as entitled to her Avatar role, which made her unlikable rather than, a hero that you could root for. I definitely think that some people hate on Korra, definitely on the misogyny factor. Some people definitely hate on her simply for being a strong female protagonist. I think some people definitely hate her. I think some people also hate her for being a flawed character and disregard that she has gone through some character development. I think some people, and I think misogyny even falls into that, because like the past avatars were flawed characters as well. But with Korra, they they definitely own in on it. So I definitely think the misogyny does fall into the flawed character thing, but I also think the flawed character stands on its own for certain people where they're just like, her flaws are too much, I can't deal with it. And unfair criticisms, I think when it comes to the power and bending debate, I think it falls into both categories in terms of like valid criticisms and unfair criticisms. On one hand, like I said, strategically weak, and she was physically gifted, so obviously losing most of her fights didn't go in her favor. But I do think for certain enemies like the Red Lotus, yeah, we can't, we have to give her some slack, because then people were psychotic. Some of her other enemies though, Korra, yeah. And not just that, where I think her why I think some of the hate is unfair is because I think some of her criticisms come from the poor writing and the production issues that made the show how it was. And so I don't think it's the fault of the character itself. I think it is the fault of the writers in some regards. So yeah, at the end of the day, Korra wasn't a great avatar, not in the slightest. She wasn't completely hopeless, but her actions, I think, definitely caused more harm than good in the long run. And the lack of real growth that we saw for the majority of the show, it made it frustrating to watch her journey. But the thing is, she wasn't Aang, and she wasn't meant to be. I definitely think a lot of the unfair criticism definitely comes from sequel syndrome and comparing her to Aang. But one thing I will say, she's far from the best avatar though. Like, we're going to have to stand on that. She's far from the worst avatar. But do let me know what you guys think. And in terms of like the new series itself, like, what are you guys thinking? Like, what was the cataclysm? Like, what did they do? Because obviously the cataclysm killed Korra. That's where the new avatars come. But what do you think it could have been? And do you think some of Korra's old team might still be alive and we're going to see them? Like, I highly doubt Korra died in old age. Or did the cataclysm take them all out with her? And also, I think part of the mission is also going to of the new avatar is also going to be restoring the connection with the ones that we lost, that Korra lost. So that's going to be really, really exciting. If that's actually true. Like, some people are assuming that it's going to be part of it. Like, I don't think I've seen any confirmation of that. But yeah, that's really exciting. Also, I'm also really, really hoping that they finally give us some news on Aang and the gang as adults, their show, because that's what we really wanted. We didn't really want another Avatar after Korra, but yeah, we got it. So I'm not gonna complain. I feel like it'll be fun. An apocalyptic world with an Avatar who has a twin. I think they said it was a twin she wasn't aware of, or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah. I'm trying to go in there completely blind, so I'm not looking at too much of the information. But yeah, guys, tell me where you, first of all, where you stand with Korra. Are you a hater or critic, or are you in the middle where you think she deserves some hate but not all the hate, kind of like me? Because I'm just like, I like Korra. I'm just like, girl, you wasn't the best. You wasn't the best, and you deserve quite a lot of hate for several things. Yes, but some things I'm just like, ooh, you people, not too much now. But yeah, she was nowhere near the best. But because we don't know the range, we don't know the full list of avatars. Like, we haven't seen them fully. Can we say she was the worst? We don't know. She could be though. She could be. She could be, because now the avatars are gone. The world hates the avatar. I mean, she could potentially be the worst. Sorry about it. But let me know where you stand, and just let me know what you're looking forward to and what you're hoping to see in the new show. Because Avatar, does have Korra, we are going to see Korra, which I think is going to be interesting, especially because she's going to explain to us what the heck happened, please. But yeah, guys, that is from me. Oh, this was so fun. Like, I really love ranting about like my books, but also like my other interests, like my nerdy interests. So this was really, really fun. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Who knows what we're going to be doing next time? But yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.